LaNorris Sellers will be by far the most important player for South Carolina's football team in 2024. But who are the four other Gamecocks that join him in that group?
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Gamecock Nation, and welcome back to the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. I'm Andrew Lyon, the host of this podcast, and I thank y'all so much for making the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen or watch for your team here today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Hope that y'all have had a great week so far as we get this underway on Wednesday afternoon/evening, depending on when y'all listen to or watch this show. We got a couple of football topics we're going to dive into on this edition of Locked On Gamecocks. EA Sports College Football 25 has come out with their toughest home environments in the game. And Williams-Brice Stadium might have gotten a little bit disrespected based on where it was slotted. We'll talk about where that stadium should have ranked amongst the top 15 in college football. But before we dive into that, I want to talk about the five most important players for South Carolina's football team heading into 2024. Obviously, a pivotal season for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks, who are looking to regain some of the momentum that they lost in 2023. And for the first portion of the show, I want to talk about the most important player. And this comes probably as no surprise to any fan, anybody that's listening or watching the show today. The most important player for South Carolina in 2024 is without question quarterback LaNorris Sellers. And there's a few obvious reasons why LaNorris Sellers ranks number one here. Obviously, he plays the quarterback position. Quarterback is considered by most people to be the most important position on the football team, but LaNorris Sellers, considering all of the changes that has taken place with South Carolina this offseason, the amount of turnover in terms of personnel on offense, the expectations for this team in 2024 in terms of on-field performance, and also the win-loss column at the end of the day, how badly Shane Beamer and this staff need this team to have a bounce-back kind of year in 2024. LaNorris Sellers is going to set the floor for this team. In essence, if LaNorris Sellers plays well this upcoming fall, then this football team is going to have at least a puncher's chance in almost every single game that they play. South Carolina fans, I think it's fair to say that you had that same sort of feeling the last couple of years with Spencer Rattler at the quarterback position. And I think that that feeling remains with LaNorris Sellers, but for some different reasons that I'll get into in just a moment. But, of course, there's also the chance that maybe LaNorris Sellers, he has a tough time adjusting to being the starting quarterback in this Dow Loggins called offense. And if he doesn't adjust well, then the worst case scenario for South Carolina, which in my opinion is about a 4-8 type season, could very much be in play in 2024. Now, LaNorris Sellers, as I just alluded to a moment ago, he is a different kind of quarterback. The size and athleticism combo that LaNorris Sellers has is one that you just don't see very often at any level in football. He's 6'3", 240 pounds, according to South Carolina's official football roster. He runs, I would say, a sub 4.6 40-yard dash, and some people might even say he runs in the 4.5 or even 4.4 range, which is just absolutely absurd, I should say, not just for being a quarterback, but considering the size and the overall frame that he carries on the football field. And that's not to say that LaNorris Sellers can't throw the ball. LaNorris Sellers, obviously, he has got an absolute cannon of an arm, as he showed on that one throw against Furman Paladins in 2023. Can easily throw at 60-plus yards, I would say multiple times a game, maybe even 70-plus if he has to throw it that far. And the big reason why, besides those two factors, I think LaNorris Sellers is the most important player for this football team in 2024 is the fact that there are admittedly some question marks surrounding him at literally every single position on the offensive side of the ball here for South Carolina. When you look at running back, you might be sitting there wondering, Andrew, what on earth could your question be about the running back spot? They got a former first-team All-SEC selection in Rocket Sanders from Arkansas, and then you throw in an Oscar Adaway III. You throw in a Jawarn Howell from South Carolina State, Dontavius Braswell, Matthew Fuller. This running back room is deep, and that is 100% true. However, we do have to wonder, how durable is Rocket Sanders going to be in 2024? Rocket Sanders, he only played in 6 games in 2023, and due to an off-season shoulder procedure that he had, he missed all of spring practice. Now, reports have come out that have said that Rocket has, done pretty well in terms of coming back from that operation, and it also sounds like that he's also lost some weight as well. So maybe he's going to be back in maybe the low 230s or even 220s range as far as his weight goes, and that could help him a little bit as far as his durability is concerned. But it is admittedly something that we do have to keep an eye on heading into 2024. At wide receiver, it's nearly a whole new crop of guys that you're going to have to build a rapport with here in 2024. Xavier Legette walks out the door along with an Eddie Lewis. A couple other guys come in to the fold or have been brought into the fold. Gage Larvadain from Miami of Ohio. Amari Huggins-Bruce from Louisville. Jared Brown from Coastal Carolina. Mazeo Bennett from the high school ranks. You name it. A lot of new faces in that room. And there is a lack of a clear jump ball threat. There isn't an Xavier Legette type receiver in that room, at least as of right now, that we have seen. Could someone maybe develop and take that kind of role this upcoming fall? I do think there's one guy that could do it, and I'll talk about him later on in the show in terms of the other important players for this team. But the point here is this. There's a lack of room production in this room. So that's the question mark at wide receiver. At tight end, same deal. Lack of proven production behind the likely starter here in Joshua Simon. And sure, you got Brady Hunt from Ball State this offseason out of the transfer portal. You bring in a really, really good high school signee in Michael Smith from Savannah, Georgia, who I think could help this team out in year one. But also, you've got a O-line coach by trade and Sean Elliott coaching that position group. And I think it is fair to question, look, how is Sean Elliott going to handle that? I don't question the man's coaching acumen, okay? He knows way more about football than I will ever know throughout my entire life. But he's never coached tight ends. And the tight end position's a lot more than just blocking, obviously. Yes, he can carry over some knowledge from his time coaching the O-line in conjunction to the tight end position as far as maybe chip blocks are concerned. All that good stuff as far as blocking schemes go. But what about route running? What about attacking the football? That's the kind of stuff that I'm curious to see how those guys perform in those areas because of the coach that they do have that will be providing oversight in Sean Elliott. And then O-line, this one's pretty simple. This was one of the worst units in all college football last year. No matter how you slice it, this group flat out was not good enough in 2023. Part of that was because they had a lot of young guys that had to throw into the fire early. Another reason for that was a lot of injuries. And also just flat out, some of the maybe older guys in this group that were a part of the team last year, quite frankly, just couldn't cut it at this level. And a couple of those guys are now gone. So this season, look, health obviously is priority number one for that room. But you also hope that, hey, they're going to be motivated after what happened last year. They've learned some lessons as far as the young guys go. And if Rashawn Lee, who comes back for, I believe, his 6th and final year of college football, he is going to be looked to lead the charge in that room, to be the leader and captain of that position group. So my point here is this. There's question marks at every position outside of quarterback. And even at quarterback, the depth there might not be considered as to be great. Because you got Robbie Ashford behind him, maybe not the greatest passer in the world. Dante Reno quite literally got on campus in January. So for all those reasons, a lot of pressure is going to be put on LaNorris Sellers to perform at a high level in year one as the starter. So he is the most important player by far for this team heading into the 2024 season. Now, who are the other 4 players that rank right behind LaNorris Sellers as far as their importance to the team is concerned? We'll talk about those players in a couple moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I've talked about this game before. I'll bring it up again. The Atlanta Braves, they will be in Truist Park this upcoming weekend at home, taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. And on Saturday, Paul Skeens is currently the pitcher expected to go in that game for the Pirates. So you want to see one of the brightest young stars in all of baseball take them out against the Braves, and again, get to watch your Atlanta Braves. You can find tickets right now for as low as $28 for that contest. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your South Carolina Gamecocks every single day. And as always, a big thank you to each and every one of you everydayers who make the Locked On Gamecocks podcast your first listen wherever you get your audio podcasts daily, or your first watch on YouTube. All right, 5 most important players for South Carolina's football team in 2024. We talked about LaNorris Sellers at the start of the show, so now let's talk about the other 4. Starting off with wide receiver Davan Campbell, a 6-year transfer brought in from Nevada. Now, Davan Campbell brings a bigger frame to this position group. Again, one of the things I talked about a lot during the winter transfer portal window was that, yes, South Carolina got a bunch of guys, Jared Brown, Gage Larverdane, Amari Huggins-Bruce, all the guys I brought up earlier. But the thing that really stuck out to me was none of these guys really stood out as far as their overall size was concerned. That's not the case with Davan Campbell. He's listed at 6'4", 215 pounds. And sure, Campbell did not exactly light up the stat sheet in 2023, but context does matter here. He had around 531 receiving yards in 2023, but he averaged 19.2 yards per reception on 31 catches. And he also, in my opinion, was held back greatly by a lackluster offense around him. According to Pro Football Focus and their stats on Davan Campbell from 2023, 19 of his 31 catches went for first downs. 20 of his 31 catches were contested catches. And get this, Davan Campbell was targeted 76 times in 2023. He only dropped 2 passes. So what that tells me, when you consider the fact that, again, he only made 31 catches on those 76 targets, is that Davan Campbell did not have the best quarterback play that really helped him showcase his absolute ceiling as far as his skill set is concerned. That will hopefully be different here at South Carolina with LaNorris Sellers leading the charge here in Dow Loggins' offense. So I think this is a great situation for Davan Campbell because he's surrounded by better, more talented players, and in my opinion, will have a better chance to show everything that he can do in this offense in 2024. So for that reason alone, he is the second most important player on this team heading into 2024. Now, at number 3, we're going to flip things over to the defensive side of the ball. I've got defensive tackle Toney Hemingway. Now, Toney Hemingway, look, he's still made some plays for this Gamecock defense in 2023, but I also think it's fair to say that he did take a step back as far as production was concerned. He had 3.5 less tackles for loss and 2.5 less sacks this past fall compared to the 2022 season, where he broke out as one of the better players in that defensive front. Now, you can argue that part of this was because of the fact that he did deal with some nagging injuries, especially I think in the middle portion of the 2023 season that held him back. And also, look, you got to give props to TJ Sanders. TJ Sanders became the most dominant player in that Gamecock defensive front in 2023. So combining those two factors together, I do think that that played a role. But Toney Hemingway, he's going to his 5th year in college football in this Gamecock defense. And This rush defense, I think, has a chance, I say a chance, to be one of the better units in the SEC. I love the amount of experience and the mixture of talent that they've got in the defensive front with that D-line and also the linebacker core. But if that is going to happen, I think that you need to have at least more than one defensive lineman that's causing problems up front. And the problem for South Carolina's defensive front last year, even though they did show improvement in this area, was that Sanders was really the only guy that was constantly giving other teams issues. They need more than that. So Toney Hemingway, stay healthy for one, but two, you've got to get back to the 2022 version of yourself. If Toney Hemingway does that, this defensive front is going to be that much scarier. When you have him, you've got TJ Sanders, a veteran in a Boogie Huntley alongside him, and other guys like Gilbert Edmond, Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart. You can already envision how much better that unit will be. But in my opinion, if Hemingway and Sanders really step up to the plate in 2024, that rush defense could be nightmarish for other SEC teams to have to deal with. At number 4, not a specific player, whoever the heck starts at left tackle, you're one of the most important players on this team. Now again, this kind of goes along the same thing with quarterback. Left tackle, very important position in football, period, because you are the blind side protector of the quarterback. And there's a couple guys that are contending for the starting job there. Tree Babalade, 5-star freshman signee Josiah Thompson, and also I would say Ja'Kai Moore. I only throw his name in there because Ja'Kai Moore, for one, has experience, something the other two guys really don't have a lot of. And two, he has played left tackle in the past, so who knows? He could get a look there, depending on how the coaching staff feels they could get the best 5 linemen out there on the field. So, whether it's Babalade, Thompson, or Moore, need you to be a big part of this team in 2024. LaNorris Sellers, look, I think he's going to help this offense because of how dynamic he is when he is running with the football, when he is running down the field. I think that there's going to be very few SEC defenders, period, that can take him head on in a running play when he's got a full head of steam. But we don't need to see a repeat of last year with Spencer Rattler, where Sellers is having to pretty much take off, sometimes within a second and a half of getting the football, having to make something out of nothing. We cannot see a younger quarterback, in this case, under duress constantly in 2024. So whoever starts at left tackle, your job is going to be one of the most important ones on this entire football team in 2024. Same exact deal at number 5. Not a specific player, but mainly a position. Cornerback number 2. Whoever plays there. Now, obviously, the top cornerback in that room is O'Donnell Fortune, coming back for his 5th season of college ball. I would imagine that O'Donnell Fortune, with the experience that he now has as a starter and the amount of time he has had in Clayton White's system, that he is going to have a decent final year here at South Carolina. But Judge Collier, Emory Floyd Jr., Vakari Swain, or Jalewis Solomon, a lot of bodies there, but again, a lack of proven production at that spot. Somebody's got to take the reins there. And the thing that I wonder, or not even wonder, think about with this upcoming season is this. South Carolina is going to play several games where their opponent is going to have a clear advantage on the perimeter. So those games, I think about Ole Miss. I think about an Oklahoma. I think about Missouri. Even a team like Kentucky with Dane Key and Barryon Brown. Those are really, really dang good wideouts. You got to play against all those guys in 2024. So, even if O'Donnell Fortune's doing his job, cornerback number 2, you got to do the same thing. Because if O'Donnell Fortune's having a good game and keeping his man in check, then in all likelihood, what these opposing quarterbacks are going to start doing is they're going to try to attack whoever the other guy is. So, Collier, he's got the wingspan, played the most out of the young guys last year, but again, he kind of had his good and bad moments, which is to be expected. Emory Floyd Jr., you're going to your 3rd season in this program. Time to see what you can do. Vakari Swain, all the athletic talent in the world. Maybe you could argue he should be playing wide receiver instead of cornerback, but he's still a cornerback for now. Had a pretty good spring game. Made some big plays back there. Let's see if he parlays that into this fall. Jalewis Solomon, the best cornerback signee that this program has had in a year or two. So let's see how he adjusts to the college game. One of those guys has to take that spot, and whoever does, you're going to be one of the most important players on this team in 2024. Now, obviously, a lot of those games are going to be played in Williams-Brice Stadium. And Gamecock fans, all love Williams-Brice Stadium and will defend that place tooth and nail. And EA Sports College Football 25, they came out with their top 25 toughest places to play just a day ago and had South Carolina kind of middle of the pack in that group. But you could argue that Williams-Brice Stadium should be ranked higher on that list. We'll dive into all of that in a few moments right here on Locked On Gamecocks. Welcome back to today's edition of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, where we cover your team every single day in 30 minutes or less. All right, let's talk about EA Sports College Football 25 and where they ranked Williams-Brice Stadium amongst the toughest home field environments in all of college football. HomeField Advantage, a big part of EA Sports College Football 25 video game that's going to be coming out, I think in just a couple weeks' time, actually, some point in July. But to get to the ranking here, Williams-Brice Stadium ranked 15th out of their top 25 home field venues. Now, instead of just going down the entire list and reading off all these stadiums one by one, I'm going to break it down to a few different groups to make this conversation a lot easier to understand. So, in regards to where should Williams-Brice Stadium actually rank on this list, let's start with the stadiums that we will not dispute. These stadiums rank ahead of Williams-Brice Stadium, in my humble opinion, and I think the opinion of many Gamecock fans. LSU's Tiger Stadium, probably the toughest home field environment to play in all of college football, period, end of story. Penn State's Beaver Stadium, the whiteout, around 100,000 fans. That place can get rocking, especially in a night game. Davan Campbell, Florida State. I think that the Tomahawk Chop, one of the most underrated traditions in all of sports. You got Oregon's Autzen Stadium, one of the loudest stadiums in all of college football because I believe of the way it's constructed. And in terms of decibel level, it is actually like right up there at the very top. Neyland Stadium for Tennessee, even if you don't like admitting that, you got to give Tennessee their due. Their home field environment is definitely a rowdy one. And Jordan-Hare Stadium with Auburn. So in my opinion, those 6 stadiums rank ahead of Williams-Brice Stadium, and there's not really a whole lot of question to be had with those 6. Now, the next group, I talk about home environments that are viewed as being good because the team is good. So basically, as long as these teams are doing really well on the field, then their fans are going to show up. But they might not always be as loyal if things take a step back or two. So I got 5 stadiums listed in this group. Bryant-Denny Memorial Stadium for Alabama. Outside of Dixieland Delight, really and truthfully don't know what's special about their home field environment. Ohio State's Ohio Stadium, even just the name itself takes a little bit of the zest out of that home field advantage. Sanford Stadium for Georgia a few years ago, I think that Sanford Stadium would have ranked a little bit lower. I think they were top 5 in EA Sports list. But Georgia, obviously the best team in college football right now, the best program in college football. So their home field environment, yeah, pretty doggone good right now because of how the Bulldogs are rolling. Oklahoma's Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. Why on earth it's got to be that long of a name? Have no clue. But they're listed in there, and I would say it's because of the fact that Sooners are typically one of the top 25 programs in the sport. And Clemson's Memorial Stadium. Look, Clemson fans, they would hate to hear this from anybody else, but that stadium's not always packed. You could argue that about a lot of stadiums, even Williams-Brice to a certain degree. But I think for Clemson, it's a little bit of the fact that they play in the ACC. They don't get a lot of big home games very often. And so therefore, they don't really show up, in my opinion, consistently like other fan bases do. So I list them in that group. Now, this next one, only one stadium in this category. One which is viewed as being good based on capacity. Texas A&M's Kyle Field. I actually posted this on X earlier on Wednesday. I think that's possibly the most overrated home field environment in all of college football. Texas A&M, listen, they're a better team than South Carolina, probably a better program than South Carolina, but their home field advantage, I don't think it's anything really to hit home about. I mean, 100,000 fans can pack in there, sure, and they're consistent with the noise level in terms of how they try to create noise, I guess. But again, I don't think that that is just outright better than Williams-Brice Stadium. And then 2 stadium environments that I will outright dispute and say I think South Carolina's Williams-Brice Stadium is better than those home field environments. Number 1 is the Swamp at Florida. Now, some SEC fans would take issue with that, but what I'll say is this. Florida, look at the last 10 years. Records are not very good. You could say the same about South Carolina, admittedly, but the thing that I'm getting at here is this. The Swamp, I think, used to be a place where you went into that stadium and it was a certain type of game, you had no shot to win. You really didn't have much of a chance. But now, I think it's a lot easier to win in that stadium. And I get it, it's been a minute since South Carolina, I think, has pulled that off. But there are plenty of teams that have gone to that stadium and won against Florida the last few years. I don't think that the Swamp really has anything intriguing about that either. I mean, the Gators have a cool new tradition with I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty, playing that at the end of the third quarter and having the fans kind of serenading to that song. But outside of that, again, I just don't really see what the big deal is about the Swamp, along with the humidity that they can have down there as well. And then Wisconsin's Camp Randall Stadium. In the Big Ten, sure, Wisconsin's home field environment is probably one of the best ones in that conference. But nationally speaking, I don't really know. If they didn't have jump around, then how else would people know about Wisconsin's home field advantage or their home field stadium? So for those two stadiums, I would outright say I think South Carolina is better as far as their home field environment is concerned. So where should South Carolina rank nationally? I think they should be ranked 10th nationally. So I think that they are 5 spots lower in EA Sports College Football 25's list than they should be. And the teams I had them ranked ahead of, you probably can already tell based on a few of them I threw out there. Alabama's Bryant-Denny Stadium and Oklahoma's Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. I don't think that there's really anything special about those two. Dixieland Delight and Sooner Schooner, that's really about it. Texas A&M, again, fan capacity. Sure, it's cool how they get kind of the fans involved with the chants and the cheers, even if you find it to be a little bit strange, in all honesty. But, again, Texas A&M, plenty of teams can go into Kyle Field and win in that stadium. I don't think it's like, an LSU or, maybe an Auburn's Jordan Hare or Neyland, where it's like, hey, very few teams are going to go into that stadium in a certain kind of game and win in that building. I don't think it's in that upper echelon. And then the Swamp, I think it's kind of lost its luster the past few years. I don't think it's as tough as it used to be to win in that stadium. And with the Badgers, I already mentioned it. They've got jump around. That's great. South Carolina's got Sandstorm. They've got the Towels. They've got a Space Odyssey with their entrance. They got the Rooster Crow. South Carolina's got at least some uniqueness to their home field environment. And they've got a baby different things where when you go to a game in that stadium, you will remember it when you leave, especially if things go well for South Carolina. But Wisconsin, again, if they didn't have jump around, I don't know what else that home environment has to offer. So, admittedly, my opinion might change if I went to some of these stadiums, but right now, I think that absolutely Williams-Brice Stadium is a top 10 home field environment in all of college football. Definitely interested to get all of your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube or on X. You can find me there at @alion_SC. One last thing before we head on for today. It has officially been announced by Chris Marler, who is a football commentator and overall SEC commentator. He has been in this sphere for a very long time. Chris Marler is going to be taking over for me, the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. He will be starting next Monday, so I've only got a couple days left on this show. My last day will be on Friday, but don't worry. I plan to have one show coming out on Thursday and 2 on Friday. But just to let y'all know, I am in the final week in my post as the host of this podcast. So obviously I'll have a lot more to say when I get to my final show, but I cannot thank y'all enough for the support that you have given me and this show. And I do hope that y'all will definitely give Chris Marler the same level of support that you've shown me over the past 2 years. I think he's going to do a lot of great things with the Locked On Gamecocks podcast. But with all that being said, it's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll be sure to catch y'all on the next show of the Locked On Gamecocks podcast.